Hi and welcome to Maths class. Today we're looking at probability and we're going to look at two-step experiments. So a two-step experiment is an experiment which has two steps. For example, I might roll a die and then I might flip a coin. So I'm doing two things one after the other. Now, here's my first example of a two-step experiment today. I've got some Lego pieces in a cup and I've got some other Lego pieces in a cup here. And so an example of a two-step experiment is I'm going to close my eyes, choose a Lego piece from the first cup, close my eyes, choose a Lego piece from the second cup. Here we go. All right, so I got a green and then a white. Okay, I did that with my eyes shut, so I wasn't cheating. What we're going to talk about first is what sample space looks like when I've got a two-step experiment, and then we're going to use the sample space in order to calculate probability. So the sample space, if you remember, is the collection of things that might happen. Oops, don't put that there. So sample space is the list of things that might happen. But I've got two steps in my experiment. So in my first cup, I had four colors. I've got yellow and blue and green and brown. In my second cup, I've got two colors, white and red. So that means there's a total of four things that might happen out of my first cup, only two things that might happen when I draw from my second cup. So this is how we can set out the sample space. I'll draw a grid, and in fact, we don't call it a grid, we call it an array. And across the top, I'm going to write the list of things that might happen when I take something out of my first cup. So that is, it could be yellow, it could be blue, it could be green, or it could be brown. Okay, when I look at my second cup, I'm going to write the things that might happen down the side here. It could be red or it could be white. If I now write those things side by side, I'm going to see all the things that could happen. I could get yellow, then red. I could get blue and then red. I could get green and then red, or I could get brown and then red, or I could get yellow and then white, blue and then white, green and then white, brown and then white. Now, if you look at this, it looks a lot like the two-way tables that we used together with Venn diagrams in the previous section, because I've got all the things that might happen from one part of my experiment and all the things that might happen from another part. But if you remember with my two-way tables, it was always using the complement, like red and not red, or blue and not blue, whereas now I'm individually listing everything that might happen. Okay, so that's one way that I can look at sample space. There's another way that I can look at sample space for a two-step experiment, and that is to use a thing called a tree diagram. And I'm going to show you how that looks. We call it a tree diagram because it does kind of look like a sideways tree. So from my first cup, there are four different outcomes. So I'm going to draw four branches on my tree. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on each branch, I'm going to write what might happen. Yellow might happen, or blue, or green, or brown. Okay, now, let's say I've gone to my first cup and I've pulled out a yellow piece of Lego. What might happen next? There are two possibilities. I could get, after my yellow, I could get a white or a red. So after yellow, I can get white or I can get red. What about if I'd pulled out blue the first time? Still two possibilities of what can happen next, white or red. Okay, if I pulled out green the first time, what might happen next? Still two possibilities, white or red. And if I pulled out brown the first time, There are two possibilities next, white or red. So on my tree diagram, my two-step experiment is represented in the fact that this is the first step and this is the second step. Now this gets repeated lots of times because white then red can happen after yellow or after blue or after green or after brown. So I put them side by side. These are my two different ways of representing the sample space from a two-step experiment. Yellow then red is here. Yellow then red is here. Yellow then white is here. Yellow then white is here. And so on. So what can I do? I can count the number of outcomes on my sample space. There's 8. All right, 4 by 2. And there's 8 here because there are 8 different ways I can follow the branches and end up out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and if I want to, I can use this to list what I've got. Yellow then white, yellow then red, blue then white, and so on. But I don't need to because it's already represented here.